What's up, everybody? Welcome to the podcast. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to start a new series that I call Tepid Takes. These are the opposite of a hot take. This is me having a very uninformed opinion about some of the topics and trends that are in the news. And the way that we come by this is he went and he found a couple of news articles that are related to business or politics or entrepreneurship or whatever, science, technology. He put them here in front of me, and I have literally not read the articles. All I'm doing is I'm looking at the headline. I'm a headline reader, and I'm going to give you my fully formed, very intelligent, official opinion on this topic, of which I am probably an expert. No, maybe not. But let's dive in. Okay, so the very first one is Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy will lead new Department of Government Efficiency, the DOGE. I know a little bit about this, and I'm very excited about this. I think this is a good thing. Anything that we can do to curb the monstrous growth of bureaucracy, I think is a good thing. I don't think anybody can stand and defend how bloated the government has become in terms of its spending, in terms of the efficiency. Like, when was the last good thing that we saw come out of the government? Like, nothing of any value really comes. And I'm a big firm believer that the government should have as little impact and reach into individuals' lives as possible, that we should have a free market. We should let people solve the problems that are the most interesting to them with very little government maneuvering. And more what I'm seeing is that the government has just become a tool of big companies that have big interests. This is what we call regulatory capture, where, you look at the aviation industry and all the issues that we've had with Boeing over the last couple of years, right? And you look at this and you go, well, how is it that doors are flying off and all these issues and wheels are flying off these planes? Like, we're having all these problems, right? And it's because there's so much regulatory capture within that industry, which makes it very difficult, if not impossible, for new individuals, new operators to come into that space and try to disrupt it. The incumbents are too well entrenched, and you have to have this government approval and government grant situation to even be viable in it. Now, the problem with this is when you have a sector that has this regulatory capture, it makes it so that the individuals, the 1 to 2 companies that are in that space, they don't have to compete on price. They don't have to be competitive. They don't have to care about any of that stuff. And we saw the same thing with NASA and with Elon moving into the space, the space of space with SpaceX, right? He looked at this and said, you know what, there is so much regulatory capture within this. It's so expensive. It's that to get to space that we're never going to be able to actually get to Mars unless we can bring down the cost. The only way we can do that is through competition and through innovation. And so he went, and because he's a billionaire and he has massive resources, he was able to compete in the space. And also because he's insane enough to throw money at the problem and go toe to toe with the government, he fought that battle and he is winning it now. But honestly, most industries, they don't have that crazy billionaire who's willing to step in and fight that battle. And so we get, regulatory capture in the form of Boeing and these airplanes that aren't any better than they were, and yet somehow the price of them has gone up exponentially. Or you look at the price of school, right? School is another higher education, universities. You look at the cost of tuition, how it's increased like 1,000-fold over the last 20 years. That's due to regulatory capture. That's due to the fact that you can't come in there and compete. They already have it locked up from a government regulatory standpoint. So I'm a big fan of Elon, Vivek getting in here, doing what they can to slice through the bureaucracy, try to open up the field a little bit more for competition. Now, whether or not they'll be successful, that's a different conversation. All right, the next one is, this next tepid take is NASA makes history with closest ever approach to sun. Okay, I know nothing about this. The thing that's surprising here, though, is that NASA did something. Look at that. NASA, you did something. Now, whether or not it was worth doing with it, is it really that big of a deal? I have no idea. I am more interested in seeing what's coming out of SpaceX and the private aeronautic divisions that are trying to have reusable rockets. The fact that they just caught a rocket with chopsticks and that they're able to land these reusable rockets onto little ships out in the sea, like, that's amazing. And they're bringing down the cost of these rockets tremendously. And I think that's far more interesting than this, which seems to be purely in the pursuit of maybe some kind of scientific endeavor. great. I'm all for science and expanding our knowledge of the universe, but I'm also a big fan of practical implementations of the technology. And I don't see anything more practical than reusable rockets that we can send to space for a fraction of the cost. We can increase our satellite coverage. You know, Starlink is a good example of this. We can increase the likelihood that we become multiplanetary. I'm a big fan of that. I'm a science fiction nerd, so I'm a big fan of getting to Mars. Let's not go towards the sun. We know that's not inhabitable. Let's try and do something with Mars. That's what I'm saying. Anywho, all right, next one is OpenAI raises $6.6 billion in largest VC round ever. I have a couple issues with OpenAI. One is I like Sam Altman. I think he's a brilliant operator. I think they've done an incredible job. I think OpenAI will go down in history as one of the most influential companies of all time, not necessarily because they're going to go and have like this big exit or like make all this money, just because they ushered in this new era of AI, which I do believe is a definitive pivotal point in humanity's existence. Now, with that said, I do have some issues with old Sam and old OpenAI, and the fact that they started as a nonprofit, that he went in front of congressional hearings and said, I don't take any money out of this. My goal is not financial pursuits and that, all this and that and the other thing. And the next thing you know, he's turned it into a for-profit of which he owns the majority. And it's like, from a theoretical, ethical perspective, I just have issues here. I'm not going to take away from the fact that OpenAI has done some incredible things. I just have some issues with the fiduciary responsibilities associated with this. And I don't think everybody's incentives are as altruistic as they would lead you to believe. So that's all I got to say on that for now. All right, next one, last one is China is winning the race for 5-minute EV charging. 5-minute EV charging is pretty incredible. I don't know how you could do that without inflicting some pretty significant damage on the battery itself. But battery technology is pretty interesting, and I think we're going to see that advance pretty tremendously over the next 10 years or so. But more interesting, actually, I'm not even interested in the EV charging thing here. What I think about here is China's not just winning the race for 5-minute EV charging. China's winning like every single race right now. And we should be very concerned about that, as if you're an American at least, because I believe the United States has blown the biggest lead over the last 50 years that any civilization has ever had. Any culture, any government, any country has ever had. We blew it. We blew the lead. We had it. We nailed it. And then we gave it all away. And we gave it to India. We gave it to China. India's not there yet, but they're going to be real fucking quick. China's already there. Like we have handed over the keys to the manufacturing infrastructure, to the everything. And it's not just problematic from an EV perspective. It's also problematic from AI development perspective. They just had their DeepSeek technology come out, and they're able to do calculations at a fraction of the cost that OpenAI, because they are concerted in their efforts in driving this thing forward and becoming a leader with it. Whereas the US is like shooting itself in the foot, trying to regulate this industry that's so fledgling and new, and trying to constrict people from entering it and how they play. It's stifling innovation. Or you look at what's really terrifying is drone manufacturing. We've talked about this in other episodes, but all of the drone manufacturing capabilities in the world are pretty much in China. That's a problem when you look at that. Drones are the next superpower in terms of military weaponry. It's the next nuke. It's a targeted nuke. You could take one drone per human in the country that you want to invade, and bam, targeted. It's the ultimate smart bomb. I would be very concerned about the potential of drone technology over the next 20 years and how it's going to play into warfare. Now, I think we're getting to a place in human civilization where war becomes less and less likely between the really big players, just because everybody has so much to lose there. Economically, it stops making sense, and nobody really is waging wars for the sake of resources anymore, right? Like Russia didn't invade Ukraine really for resources. That's not why we do this anymore. Now it's more for control and power. And honestly, you can have more control and power through economic levers, or then you get things like in the Middle East where people are just killing each other because everybody hates each other. That's a different story. Humans will always hate each other. But at the large scale, I think the impetus for large scale wars is going less and less and less, which just makes the power of a drone even more powerful because they can inflict very concerted damage. Anyway, all that's to say, went off on a tangent here. I'm very concerned about China's developments. Not to say that they're a bad country, not anything like that. I'm looking at it as the shifting of world powers. Ray Dalio wrote a really good book about this called The New World Order. I would highly recommend reading that. He's a brilliant man, very smart, very well considered, and just looks at the trends of history, right? We know that history doesn't repeat itself, but it always rhymes. And so he looks at the trends over the last 1,000 years and he says, okay, here's what we can expect. And it is undisputable that U.S. is declining as a superpower, just from a macro trend perspective, but also just the rise of China and India. And that, I think, is going to be a good thing in a lot of ways. I'm not saying that's a doom and gloom and like I'm not saying they're the bad guys. That's not the case or anything like that. I just think the U.S. has inflicted a massive amount of damage on itself over the last 50 years. And hopefully, going full circle back to the beginning of this video, is the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, can maybe cut through some of that red tape, free up some of the innovation for us to actually become what America was, which is the land of the free and the pursuit of the American dream, which is if you have an idea and if you have the resources and the willpower to go and do the thing, nobody's going to stop you. You can change the world. And that's what I think the U.S. has stopped being in a lot of ways, is a world changer. So hopefully we can get back to that. Now, those are my tepid takes. Those are based off of my very informed opinions, based off the fact that I do not read the news. So who knows if I'm completely off base off this. I live in an echo chamber of my own making. So take this all with a big grain of salt. If you like these types of episodes, let me know. Take a screenshot, share it with me on Instagram, @Vicino. And that's how I know if this is something that you guys want more of. If you don't want more of it, take a screenshot and say, Anthony, no more of this. I'll get the message there too. But one way or the other, let me know. And I'll see you guys in the next episode.